Let's talk more then about the Battle of Isandlwana, and we're joined via Zoom by Professor Bheki Mngomezulou. He's Director of the Center for the Advancement of Non-Racialism and Democracy at the Nelson Mandela University. Of course, to unpack for us this particular Battle of Isandlwana, which was, of course, is being commemorated this afternoon. A very good afternoon to you, Prof. Thank you so very much for joining us here on SABC News.
Thank you very much, Sis Flo, for having me. Although load shedding is continuing to cause havoc, but we're still breathing, fortunately.
Yeah, of course. Thanks very much. All right, so let's talk then about the Battle of Isandlwana. I mean, a decisive victory, as we know, for the Zulu nation, causing this defeat, the first defeat of the British invasion of Zululand. Let's talk about that significance of that.
No, thank you very much, Flo. This particular battle was very significant in a number of ways. Maybe for starters, we must recognize the fact that the British were not that smart.
Yeah.
You recall that in 1867, there had been an attempt by Lord Carnarvon to unite North America. So they came with that idea to Africa, and then they dispatched Sir Buckley Frere to do the same job in Southern Africa. And then Sir Buckley Frere made a number of mistakes, one of which was to provoke King Cetshwayo to the extent that, of course, they ended up fighting at the Battle of Isandlwana. And then this victory was a humiliation to the British Army. There were a number of them that were fighting the eastern part of Europe and India, but then they had just dispatched an army which they thought was going to annihilate the Zulu army within a short space of time, only to be surprised to find that the Zulus had a strategy, and then, of course, they won this particular Battle of Isandlwana. As the king was saying a few minutes ago, had the Zulus followed the instructions from King Cetshwayo to the script, then, of course, the Zulu nation would have survived. Ulundi would not have fallen. Because after winning at the Battle of Isandlwana, there were a number of mistakes that were made, one of which was committed by Zimbabwe, and many others, of course, wanted fame. And they made a mistake and they didn't follow the instructions. But this particular battle was, in fact, a significant moment, not just for the Zulu nation, but of course made history in the history of the British war battle. I mean, after all the years that the British had won, this time around, they came back empty-handed, and it was a significant moment. And a number of generals were killed during this particular battle. That is why then we still value it today.
Prof, I want to talk about this particular strategy that you speak of. I mean, it is very important to note. I mean, if you're thinking about back then, you're talking about the Zulus perhaps carrying spears, and, you know, we're talking about the British being armed, you know, perhaps with guns. It is quite clear, and historically we know that, you know, this was, you know, as you say, it was humiliating for the British Army, who were equipped with vastly superior technology and military weapons. So how was this battle won? I want to hear about this particular strategy that you speak of when we're talking about spears versus guns. I mean, how exactly were the Zulus managed to win this battle?
First of all, Flo, if you want to win a battle, you must be disciplined. That is the point of departure. If you are not disciplined, no matter how tactical you are, no matter how well armed you are going to lose. In this case, Zulus were not well armed as compared to their counterparts, that is the British. But then credit, I think, must go to the late King Shaka, who came with this strategy of basically engulfing the enemy by having two horns, the left horn and the right horn, and then the chest of the army. So what they would do in that strategy, they would first send the left horn to go on the other side, and then send the right horn to go on the other side, and then the enemy will only be seeing the chest of the army. As they advance to face the chest of the army, they will find themselves having been surrounded by the other forces they were not aware of. So that strategy was very critical. And then, of course, accompanying that was a discipline, as I say. You don't just attack because you see there is an opportunity for you to attack. Like the Americans did during Gulf War I and Gulf War II, talking about what they called a decapitation mission, seeing a chance and then pouncing on the enemy. Don't do that. We have to follow instructions. You wait for the army commander to tell you when to strike, not because you see an opportunity. So a combination of those three things then assisted the Zulu nation to overpower the British, even though they were well armed, because they were following instructions to the letter, and that is why they emerged victorious.
Yeah, and do you think that, this set the tone, that the Zulu nation was able to set the tone, for others not to want to battle it out with the Zulu nation? It must have been an important victory, and I wonder if it set the tone going forward.
In fact, the opposite is true, Flo. You recall that there had been a number of wars between the British and other nations, like AmaXhosa, for example. We had 100 years war. We had a number of wars that were fought in the Eastern Cape. And then at one point, one of the AmaXhosa kings was saying that you may have defeated us here, but then just cross Utugela, and then let's see if you'll be able to defeat the Zulus. And this, in fact, annoyed the British because they were of the view that having defeated AmaXhosa after so much resistance, they thought it was going to be easy for them to defeat AmaZulu. Little did they know that they were going to face a different enemy altogether. So, starting with the AmaXhosa, and then of course coming to AmaZulu and many other nations, or Izizwe as we call them, then AmaZulu were the last ones to be defeated. So after the fall of Ulundi, or after the fall of King Cetshwayo, then of course it meant that Africans in this part of Africa then had been defeated. So there wasn't anything else that was going to happen after that. As you recall that after King Cetshwayo had been disempowered, then the Zulu nation was divided. We had a number of smaller people being elevated. You even had a John Dunn being given a particular area around Mandeni, and then of course having 13 wives, and then being one of the so-called chiefs. So a number of things happened. So after this, the fall of the Zulu Empire in 1879, there wasn't much to talk about Zulu resistance or African resistance for that matter. So this marked basically the apogee or the climax of the encounter between Africans and the British.
Yeah, and how can the nation, in fact, draw strength in the significance of this day to deal with the problems of today? Like the king did mention there, he condemned the killing of people living with albinism. How do you take that and bring it to today's challenges?
No, in fact, I was listening to the king with keen interest. He was on point on a number of issues. One, of course, was to basically talk about Zulu identity, saying that as Zulus, we have to be united, and then saying that one of the things Zulus are known for is respect. That is true. Historically, Zulus are known for that. That is respect, and then, of course, welcoming any stranger and treating a stranger as if the stranger is part of the family. Then the other one is unity. As he said, he made an example of a rock, saying that you can take it to the laundry, but it will still remain a rock. Those are some of the characteristic features of the Zulu nation. But then, unfortunately, with both politics and of course religion, as he correctly pointed out, then Africans were divided. And in this case, you'll find people not doing certain things.
All right, Prof, I think we lost you there. Apologies. Carry on, sir.
Yeah, there was somebody talking on the background. That was talking to me. So I was saying then the king was absolutely right, because in present day South Africa, we are having what I normally refer to as a dual system, whereby our traditional practices are still intact and the constitution protects us from doing that. And then, of course, you have the Western way of understanding governance structures, which is why we have the national government, provincial government, and local government. But then if you look at Zulu identity and Zulu practices, we can still do certain things and then maintain our identity. One, of course, being the respect that the king was talking about, and then the other one, being disciplined, because if you are not disciplined, like I was saying earlier on, you will not win anything. And those are some of the things that we're supposed to be doing. And then, of course, the other one, respecting our customary and cultural practices. This thing of killing one another, either in politics or because of religious intolerance, it doesn't assist us as a nation. I was saying to some of your colleagues yesterday that the moment you kill another politician, then it means that you are killing someone with brains. What will end up happening is that this country will be ruled by fools, because all those who are smart will have been killed. So what the king was saying basically was that you cannot kill someone just because that person happens to be an albino. That can't be. You cannot also downgrade our traditional leaders. You cannot downgrade also our traditional doctors who have been assisting the nation. Even during Isandlwana, they played a critical role. Now, if you kill albinos and then sell them to some of these traditional healers, you are basically saying that they've ceased to be Zulus, they've ceased to be Africans, and there's something else which I don't have a name for. So those are the lessons that I think we can draw from the past and then try to apply them to our present context, as the King correctly pointed out.
Prof, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. We certainly do appreciate your insight and views. That's Professor Bheki Mngomezulou there, unpacking for us the Battle of Isandlwana, as is being commemorated today in KZN.